So how this is going to work, I think, if you are waving your hand, I can make you a speaker, and then you can ask a question or talk to us. So we have a few people from GDS here today. We have Lawrence, we have Vicky, we have Tim, we have Kuba. And I think there might be a few more people joining us. So this is a great opportunity to just have a chat with people who are working as designers at GDS. I have to say, like, I will be staying a bit in the background because I got COVID and I don't feel that awesome. So I'll be on mute occasionally and just cough here a little bit. So I'll be making a few more GDS people speakers as well. So maybe we do a little round and just introduce ourselves. Vicky, Lawrence, Tim, and Kuba, if you quickly say who you are and what you do at GDS, that would be terrific. And then we let people think about some questions they might have for us.
Okay, so I guess given I was already talking, I'll start. So I am Vicky. I am a senior interaction designer. And yes, I've been at GDS for just under a year. And I will finish, I will hand over to Lawrence, and I'm finishing speaking.
Yeah. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, cool. Yeah. I kicked myself out like 4 times in a row. So I guess we're just doing some intros. Yeah, I'm Lawrence. I work on the international team. Been at GDS for about 6 years now. I will stop talking and give Kuba the mic.
Thanks, Lawrence. I hope you can hear me. I'm Kuba. Nice to see everyone. I work as a design lead on gov.uk. Yeah, looking forward to hearing everyone's questions. I'm going to stop speaking and hand over to Tim.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you all on here. So my name's Tim. I'm the head of interaction design at GDS. And I've been there for about 10 years now. So yeah, I look after kind of all things interaction design with particular focus on the gov.uk design system. And yeah, looking forward to your questions. So handing back to Martin or to Kuba, whoever wants to speak next.
Cool. And we also have Amina. I'm just giving Amina also speaking responsibilities. Amina, do you quickly want to say who you are and what you do at GDS as a designer?
Hi, I'm Amina. I'm a service designer at GDS. I'm currently working on gov.uk, which is the government website.
Amazing. Yeah, I could quickly say as well who I am. I'm Martin Jordan. I'm head of service design. I'm now in a little unit that's a spin-off of GDS, but I'm working still very closely with people at GDS. And I've been, with the digital units of Cabinet Office for almost 6 years now. It's been a little while. So if you do have questions for us, you can just raise your hand and make a speaking request, and then we'll be inviting you to speak. We want to say we do have a few open campaigns at the moment, so we are looking for interaction designers and service designers. Maybe Kuba, do you want to say something about the currently advertised service design roles? And maybe Tim, maybe you want to say a few things about the currently advertised interaction design roles, while we're just waiting for people to like raise their hands and ask questions.
Sounds great. Thanks, Martin. And we will find a way of putting a link to those campaigns in the chat as well. So yeah, in terms of service designers, it maybe is worth starting by saying
sorry, Kuba, now we're hearing some wind or something. Tim, do you want to briefly talk about the interaction design roles?
I am.
Yeah, sure. Not sure. Kuba, are you back?
I think I'm back. Sorry, I think my wireless headphones just like sprung into action at a really bad time. But if you can hear me now, then I'll just continue talking about the service design role and then hand over to you, Tim. So yeah, as I mentioned, 3 types of designers we hire in government: so graphic designers, interaction designers, and service designers. graphic designers tend to kind of think at a scale of kind of individual components of the things that we make, thinking a lot about typography, about kind of visual language of our products and of our services. Then we have interaction designers who are focused on kind of creating flows, creating user journeys, joining things up, thinking a lot about the kind of overall language of our products and services. And then we have service designers who are thinking about what do the how do we scope our services? What is the right size for our products and services, and how do we structure them in a way that makes them easy for people to use? So yeah, we have two campaigns live in terms of the service design campaign that is currently running. I think that's currently scheduled to end on Monday, but I believe we will be extending it for a little while because we have quite a few roles open. The roles are at both kind of mid-weight as well as senior level. So be looking for people across like multiple kind of amount of experience, and looking for people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And even if you haven't in the past done a role that's been labeled service design, we would encourage you to apply if you find it interesting and if you think you could fit in. There are across a number of our kind of programs. So GDS is organized in multiple different kind of directorates. We have some roles in gov.uk, which is a bit of GDS that works on the government's website and works on improving their website. Some of those roles are around kind of how we make sense of patterns in gov.uk, how we bring all the things together, thinking about taxonomies, thinking about content, stuff like that. We also have some roles in our data teams, so trying to join up data across government, trying to give publishers across government useful information so that they can sort of improve services, the pages that they work on. And finally, we have some roles in digital identity as well, so working on our One Login for Government program. And I believe there might also be some on our service transformation program, which kind of cover government as a platform, and our kind of consulting team called Expert Services. So yeah, if you have any questions around those, then we'd be happy to answer them in this session. But before we get to that, Tim, do you want to talk about the other campaign we have on?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you've covered off a lot of what I was going to say. Anyway, we've recently finished one big campaign to hire interaction designers, which was really successful. So we've hired maybe 6 or 7 people that way. But we're going to go live on Monday, I think next week again, for another campaign to hire some more interaction designers, both at mid-weight and senior level, for basically all of the same teams that Kuba has just talked about. So it's kind of across the board, across GDS. And just to set some context again, as Kuba's already said, like the big difference, if you like, between interaction design and service design in the way that we see it is, whilst service designers are primarily focused on the high-level end-to-end multi-channel journeys across different parts of gov.uk and spanning departments and so on. Interaction designers are primarily focused on the detail down at the level of like individual pages and layouts and user interface elements and flows between screens and so on. And those two worlds very much overlap, and they have to. But the idea is that like the different types of designer focus at the different levels. Yeah.
Great. So if you are just joining this, a few people just joined the last few minutes, you can raise your hands to request to speak, and then ask us any kind of question, because this is the whole point of this. You can ask us anything that's related to working as a designer at GDS. And I think, Vicky, you had the idea about of like talking briefly about how it is to work in the public sector in contrast to working in the private sector. Vicky, do you want to talk a bit about that, maybe?
Yes. Yes, I can. And I guess for my colleagues, if you want to share some of your experiences as well, because I'm not the only person who's come from private sector to public. But yes, I was agency side for a few years, and then I came into government. And I think there are loads of differences, but I think the one that's most interesting and most useful is getting to work in a proper interdisciplinary team in an iterative way. So it's a very different type of work. When I was agency side, I would often be the one UXer, and I would just have to throw together some screens, maybe get to do some testing, and hope that it would be okay. However, in government, it's very different. I get to work with a content designer, and I love working with content designers. They're my best friends, and together we will do one journey, start off with it being really simple, almost holding things back to check if there's a need, and then we'll do testing, and then we'll see what happens, and we'll do it again and again and again. So it's a very different cadence of work. It could be a little bit slower, but because we get to work with specialists, by the time our stuff ends up out in the world, most of the time I'm really happy with what I've done, and it's something that I find quite a privilege to be able to do that, but also because the work is so important. So I'll finish speaking.
Great, thank you so much. Does anyone else want to offer their perspective on working in the public sector versus working in the private sector? Just a few more different lenses from the people from GDS.
I think I'd like to mention the thing that struck me the most, which was that the way that we kind of measure success is quite different to the private sector, because in the private sector, profit is a really kind of important thing that you think about, and it's all about kind of getting the most users and those types of metrics. Whereas I find in the public sector, it's a lot more about outcomes that you kind of help people achieve. So, rather than the fact that a huge amount of people are using your product, you think about what are they doing with that product, and what does that kind of help them do in their lives, which is I personally find kind of a lot more fulfilling, and also I think it leads to kind of better quality of work, because you can really drill down onto what the purpose of the things we kind of make and put out into the world is. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
If I can just add to that, and I think it's partly for the same reasons that we're not as motivated by the bottom line as perhaps you would be in the private sector, is that it's much easier for us to share our work and collaborate and communicate kind of across boundaries, because we can do all of that in the open. We're not trying to protect our IP or anything like that. So it's meant that things like the design system, we've been able to kind of make them quite collaborative efforts. And so we have hundreds of people from across government who feel empowered to make contributions to that. And also we're able to focus on things that perhaps in the private sector are harder to justify. So accessibility, for example, if that's a thing that you're interested in, that you care about, then government is a great place to really go deep into that world and to do kind of to go above and beyond, really, in terms of providing user interfaces which are as accessible to as many people as they possibly can be. So that's definitely been a thing that I found really appealing and rewarding over the years. I'll stop talking now.
Cool, thank you very much. Amina, Jeremy, are there any things that you want to add? Anything that stands out for you when it comes to contrast working in the private public sector, maybe, if that's something you have seen at both sides?
Should I go? Do you want to go, Amina?
I don't have much to add because my only experience as a designer has been in the public sector, luckily, so I can't really compare.
Great. Then Jeremy, go.
Yes, in my experience, so was it about, I don't know, spent about a good 5-6 years in the private sector, Although one of a few of those years was spent working in an agency where I was put to work on public sector work, which was my first taste of working within the public sector, although with the lens of I guess private sector. The thing that I guess strikes me in terms of the differences is the speed. I guess both fast and slow. It's almost as black and white as that. It's definitely, for me anyway, slower within the public sector, but I think rightly so. As Tim mentioned, like you get to really focus in on making sure things are accessible for people, making things, ensuring that services are safe and inclusive as much as possible, and really having the time to think through that, although occasionally we might be pressed to work on projects that are really, I guess, critical to that moment in time. Brexit or coronavirus are things that pop into my head. And sometimes you don't have that luxury when I think about my old private sector work and experiences. Yeah, so not to say that we're all slow and and lazy, I guess, but we're given the time to think and explore what should be done and how to do it right in the right way, in the best way. That's what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
That's me.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Can someone give us a bit of an overview what GDS is in the first place? So what is the Government Digital Service? What is its remit? What is it doing? I think some people see this as a synonym for Gov.uk. Maybe someone can elaborate a bit, like what is GDS? What does it do?
I can have a go. I guess the remit of GDS has shifted over the years because we've had different priorities, different things that we've been focusing on. The common thread over the last 10 years, I guess, has been GovUK. It's the most visible thing that GDS is responsible for in some sense. And so just to kind of clarify that, what GDS is responsible for with regards to GovUK is the overall architecture of that website and the way that it's designed and the platform that delivers all of the information. So the kind of static content, the guides and policy documents and so on. And the homepage and the search engine and the browse pages and the navigation, all of that stuff. And then what happens hundreds of times over all around GovUK is that it hands over to a particular transaction or service, which is the bit of GovUK that does stuff, if you like, where you type in data into forms and you're applying for things or requesting things or cancelling things. Typically, those bits of GovUK are delivered by service teams in other departments around the country, DWP, Home Office, MOJ and so on. And the way that we support the teams that are doing that work is that we also provide what we call platforms. And so there are 5 or 6 platform teams in GDS. And platforms are kind of reusable services for service teams that they can use to help them build their services. So for example, there's a platform that teams can use to allow for taking payments in a service. There's another platform that helps teams send text messages and emails and so on. The GovUK design system is a kind of a platform. We're looking at building other platforms right now. So for example, we're looking into one for being a kind of a general purpose form builder for GovUK. So you've got the platforms that we provide, you've got GovUK itself, and then there are a couple of other things. So I think Cooper mentioned earlier, there's a kind of consultation service that we provide now called professional services. where people will go into departments and support them and help them deliver the services in a more direct way. So we're basically looking at all the different ways in which we can support the rest of government to delivering really usable, useful, accessible public services.
Cool. That's really helpful. So now we're kind of like 23 minutes in, and we didn't have anyone asking us a question yet. So we have a few things probably to say, but maybe someone tries. So that you should find at the lower left a little microphone icon that says request. So please feel free to use it. This is what it's for.
So Martin, we actually do have a couple of questions from Mary, who's put it via
Great.
Twitter. We will say honestly to people, we're just trying to decide if you're feeling shy, we're about to put questions via Twitter. We're honestly just figuring out the right hashtag for it. So yeah, Mary had two questions, and I'll read the first one out. She's really interested in knowing how much overlap there is in discovery between user researchers and service or content designers. What do you do when you're not pitching in with the research at that stage?
Do you want to answer this one as well? Or?
Yeah, I will start. I'll start, and then my colleagues can also mention some of them. So yes, I have been involved with a few sort of discovery-esque activities, both at GDS and actually in some other departments. I think the user researchers and designers do work hand in hand. I often feel that discovery is the best phase for user researchers because it is so much about discovering. But where designers can help is some of the understanding what the current service landscape looks like. Then for service designers, helping with like what does it mean to map these out and visualizing things. So there will be a lot of overlap between the user researcher and the service designer running workshops and the like. When there are content designers, they're often maybe doing content audits, looking at what's going on, even starting to think about like the content strategy. And when there are interaction designers, it might be where there are concepts or technical elements we want to start just playing with what might it mean to start developing something, or in some discoveries, if there's one option, maybe starting to create some other concepts to remind stakeholders that actually, there's not just one option, there's many. I'll be honest, that last one I haven't had to do so often at GDS. I've done it in other departments, but yeah, I think there's a lot of very complementary activities that happen between the user researcher and the other designers. And I will finish speaking.
I'm happy to add a slightly maybe different perspective is something that so I guess my answer is twofold. First of all, for like the role of service designers in discovery is I think so much of it is about like sort of coalescing the team around things, whether it's by helping kind of make useful artifacts that help the team kind of put all the learnings in one place, thinking about blueprints, thinking about kind of anchoring learnings around user journeys and stuff like that. Is I always find that there is like an enormous amount of value in. I also think that there is an interesting role sometimes for interaction designers in discoveries, which is that prototyping things can be a very useful way to learn. So if discovery is all about kind of answering some quite big fundamental questions, then I think sometimes the easiest way to answer those questions is by making something and putting it in front of people and using it not as a thing that you're trying to kind of iterate until it's a product, but rather than as a quick prompt, a provocation. And prototypes can be a very useful way of doing that. Does anyone else have any contributions to that? Or any follow-up questions, actually?
I was just going to blurt out Provocates. Just to add to what you were saying, like, it's as an interaction designer, like, if it can be quite interesting to just, put something out there and use that as a way to try and gauge how much a problem is an actual problem, for example, or yeah, to prompt discussions around, or like help to focus discussions on a particular assumption or hypothesis you might have at that discovery phase, is quite interesting to do as an interaction designer.
I was just going to add to that. Actually, I feel like this is something we're still learning. Is that there are different reasons for prototyping, even if the activity can look the same. And we're starting to learn that in some situations, if you're very intentional with it, it's okay to kind of go out there and just put some ideas out, because, as Jeremy says, you're trying to provoke some kind of response that you can learn from. So sometimes we're prototyping in a very, very iterative way, and we're being quite conservative and only adding things if we can demonstrate that they're meeting user needs or in somehow improving the project, particularly in later stages where something is already live. But sometimes, especially in the discovery in the early phases, we're trying a few wildly different ideas, and we don't have evidence necessarily that one or the other is going to succeed. But the intention is to kind of provoke that response, and also to do some of our design thinking out loud, if you like. Sometimes you're not sure what the answer to a question might be until you just try to make it, and it's in the making that you start to discover what the complexities of the problem are. Yeah, you learn, you understand the problem better once you kind of start to try and make a thing that solves it.
So if there's no other responses from the rest of the designers, so say two things. One, we now do have a hashtag. So if you want to tweet us a question, if you use the hashtag AskDesignGDS, so and it's also on the Twitter timeline with the event, so you can tweet that to us. And then we do have another question from Mary, which is asking about if we have data analysts who focus on analytics and provide designers with a steer of what pain points to look at. And I'll start answering that. I think the short answer is yes. I know on my team, which is the Gov.uk accounts team, we have a performance analyst, and she's been helping us understand some of the, over the last year or so, she's been helping us understand when we could do certain things on Gov.uk, and we've also been giving feedback about we just launched something and just seeing how it goes. So yeah, short answer from my experience is yes. And so I'll invite any other designers if they have anything else to add about data analysts at GDS, and I will stop speaking.
Excellent. I'm just thinking of Jeremy, because Jeremy has been co-creating the user-centered design and data community. So Jeremy, you might have some insights, I reckon.
Yeah. Please excuse me, because I just walked out the front door because I'm on my way somewhere.
No worries.
So might get some background noise. Yes. I sort of forgot the question. Sorry, as I was walking out the door. Can you repeat it?
This data analysts at GDS, and working to give insights for designers.
Yes, definitely a thing. So I worked within a group of data teams on gov.uk, trying to help make better use of analytics from Google Analytics and user feedback that we collect on gov.uk, and trying to figure out how to distribute that to teams on gov.uk. So it's something that we're constantly trying to think about and improve. As designers, I think most project teams on gov.uk and across GDS, and I imagine across government as well, have, most teams, if they're lucky, will have a performance analyst who is looking into the analytics. You might have user research as well, who might be looking at the feedback that we collect as well, gathering insights to help the teams, product managers, designers, content designers figure out what to do next, how to improve a thing. And as Martin mentioned, while working on that team, set up a community called the User-Centered Design and Data Community. There's a blog post that we wrote about that community, why we set it up, and how to sign up to it as well if you want to get involved. Because we set up that community to just bring other user-centered design practitioners across government together who might be working on data, I guess, products and analytics and things like that, and have a community to share our learnings about how we use that data and how we use that data to help us improve services. There's actually a talk coming up later this month, 22nd of March, we've got two speakers talking about how their teams are using data to improve services and make iterations to them. I'm going to stop there. Let us know if you got any further questions or anything you want to know about that community as well.
Cool. I was just finding a tweet from Dan. Sorry, I just found a tweet from Dan that included a link. That included a link specifically to that blog post, and Dan also had a question. Dan had a question that I'm just going to find here. Dan asked about co-design. How can we involve the people we're building services for more in the design process? Have you had any success with real co-design? Who wants to take that one?
I wonder because Dan, you mentioned that you couldn't put your hand up. I kind of be interested in finding out more about what do you mean by real co-design. Because I agree there are kind of degrees of like involving users in the process, and yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear more about the question, but I don't know how you can actually do that. Martin, are you getting people requested?
I've invited Dan to speak. So looks like if you ask us questions, we can add you. So yes, Dan, you should now have the microphone.
Let's give Dan maybe a moment. I think we have seen different levels of co-design. I think one that some colleagues of us have been blogging about recently is a lot of like co-design with farmers at the Future Farming program in DEFRA. That's the Department for Rural Affairs and Food and all of that. And they have been working very closely with farmers because there's a lot of change that's going to happen in farming related to climate change and so on. So they have to create a very involved process. So we've seen quite a bit of activity in that space. And internally, we also had presentations from other government departments quite a bit. One thing that has been done recently as well, where the various departments, and I think there's always a question like what is potentially as well the level of involvement of users and what kind of potentially even like delegation of power is there, right? Because co-design means that people have kind of like an equal amount of power potentially in what's going to be designed. I think we have seen quite a few government departments that opened up user research panels, so where people, members of the public, have been signing up to kind of like engage and look at service transformation and services specifically. So I think a number of different examples. I'm just trying to find a tweet as well about the user research panel that GDS has set up. I can drop this in here. Yeah, but maybe someone else. Kuba, do you want to say something?
I think actually, come to think of it, I think most maybe examples of what might be construed as co-design in my kind of career in government are actually just like being really good at engagement. And I do think there is a big difference between like properly kind of devolving power in who makes decisions about like the design of a service to its users is very different from doing a good job engaging people and making sure you gather the input before you make decisions about the shape of it. I'd be really interested in hearing like examples of how we can do the former. Because yeah, it's an area that would love to learn more about.
Thank you. So for the audience, I think we will be honest. This has been a bit of an alpha for us, trying out Twitter Spaces, and it seems like some people that are on joining from desktop and the like can't raise their hands. So we are monitoring Twitter. So if you do send us those, if you send us your questions via Twitter, we will answer you. And I'll finish speaking.
I found some settings. Maybe I just realized there's another setting. Can you try again? Like if you can hit the little record button, the microphone button now. I think I changed the settings here. Let's see. Maybe there was a configuration mistake.
So if anyone has a question, if anyone A has a question or B just wants to help us try making this a not just the designers speaking to each other, we will be thankful.
While that happens, I think one other question that we briefly maybe already touched on is kind of like also when moving, particularly from the private sector to the public sector, roles are naturally a bit different. So there is the role of a product designer or a UX designer, often in the private sector, and when coming to government, those roles don't exist in that way. So we'd rather have interaction designers and service designers, and sometimes people ask us, and user researchers, like, what role should I pick? And sometimes people apply even for multiple roles because they can't really figure it out from the outside. So maybe we can talk a bit about the differences of these roles, and maybe also like what this entails. Maybe, well, some people keep asking us, like, what is a day in the life of a XY designer look like in government? Well, probably like a single day isn't really representative, and it might be quite boring. But maybe we can give a bit of an overview of the different things that you might be doing as an interaction designer and as a service designer. Who wants to talk about that for a moment? Amina, can I put you on the spot? Do you want to talk about like what you do as a service designer, maybe?
Sure. So what do I do as a service designer? So funny you asked that, only because my parents asked me the same thing the other day as well. And what I said to them was, part of my role is to help the team think about how they can apply like user-centered design into the problems we're trying to solve. So if they are not familiar with UCD, getting them to understand what it is and like how we can think about the user's needs and design things in relation to that. So instead of designing for the business and its wants and like, you know, whatever GDS wants to achieve, it's more about what do the users want to do and where do they want to go? How do we help them get there? So that's like the focus of like my work, I guess. And the design element is trying to design those solutions with the team and collaborating with people who are experts. So whether it's the different disciplines I work with, like content, user research, performance analysts, but also collaborating with people who may be outside of that, so other departments. Right now I'm working on a journey called Moving to the UK, so the visa process. We're going to have a workshop next week with UKVI, which is the immigrations branch of the Home Office, and the visa and immigration branch of Home Office, sorry. So yeah, it's about collaborating, working with people from different disciplines, getting them to be part of the design process, to share their ideas. And yeah, I think that's the crux of what I do. I probably have missed something out, but that's what I think I do. And a little background about me: I wasn't a service designer until about a year and a half ago. I was a policy advisor, and I switched into design. I started off as a junior service designer, and recently I got promoted to be a midweight service designer. So I had a foot in policy for a while. I really did enjoy it, but I realized I wanted to actually make things for people and create stuff. And in design, you can do that more on a tangible level than policy. So that's why I switched.
Cool. That's really, really great to hear. I just see one question from Steve, who's asking, what has been your favorite project you've worked on that made a big impact on the public? P.S. I love GDS. Yeah, favorite projects. What was your favorite project? Who wants to answer that? I'm really curious to hear.
I can give it a go. I think it definitely ticks the first box of being my favorite project I worked on. Less sure about the immediate impact to the public, because it's a little bit more kind of probably civil servant focus. So a couple of years ago, I was doing some work on something that was called and still is service communities. So this was basically our attempt to try and organize government a little bit better around like the things people actually tend to do with it. So rather than it being organized around kind of big siloed departments, they have very kind of distinct cultures and not very clearly defined kind of service offerings. We're trying to help people create groups and basically trying to form those groups around things people actually do with government. So for example, what would happen if we created a group for all the people in government that work on things like starting a business, or that work on things like importing things into the UK. So you got this really interesting thing where you'd be getting all these people from very kind of different cultures and different departments into a single room, and you would like work with them to map the journeys of people, and there would be lots of kind of interesting realizations of people who should basically have been speaking to each other for a very long time, but weren't able to because they were too kind of siloed and separated by the organizational structure. And that was just a really wonderful thing because it felt super transformational, and we had a lot of kind of agency to be given this really, really wide problem and to kind of explore it. So we managed to like kickstart quite a few of those communities and create some guidance that currently lives in the service manual. And it had quite, I would say, a hopefully big impact still kind of to this day, even if we don't have a team working on this at the moment. But it was definitely my favorite thing so far because it was a wonderful team, and we were quite autonomous. So it's good fun.
Great. I just pinned a tweet about service communities if anyone is interested in reading more about it. What was... we have one person who's now a speaker. Katie, do you have a question for us? And then we pause for a moment our favorite project answers. If you have a question, please ask.
No, I do apologise. I'm not supposed to be speaker. I'm just listening.
That's also fine. That's also fine. Jeremy, do you want to talk about your favorite project, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I think my favorite project was working on a thing called content data. So content data is part of the publishing tools on gov.uk, and it was part of a piece of work back in 2018 where we were looking at, I guess, revamping, is that the right word? Working on the content operating model for publishers to gov.uk. So it was a project looking at the end-to-end of how to make better content publish better content. One of those things was content data, which helps to give user or publishers analytics about their content that they publish on gov.uk and make it in a way that's easily accessible. Not everyone has access to Google Analytics. Make it as easy to read as possible. So building in things like I guess little bits of information about how to read the content, the data properly, what might be a good indicator of a well-performing, well, I'd say well-performing, but within the context relative to the type of content, and also making it accessible as well, so providing alternatives to charts, the line charts that we were providing. We only got up to like an MVP though, which I'm a bit bummed out, I guess. I hope I'm allowed to say that. So it's in a kind of minimal viable product mode, but it is something that anyone with a publishing gov.uk sign-on publishing account can access. So yeah, if you're interested, although it doesn't cover all pages of gov.uk, so service transactional pages, it doesn't, because those are within departments themselves, and there are a few other pages, I think, which I can't think of. Maybe there's some tax pages that HMRC owns. Yeah, that was one of my favourite projects. Great team. When you get a multidisciplinary team that just kind of almost predicts and finishes each other's sentences, it's a dream. It's amazing. So I reminisce and long for those experiences again.
Cool.
That's me.
Thank you very much. Vicky, do you want to tell what your favorite project has been? Maybe in GDS, but maybe as well in other parts of government.
There's a part of me that says sometimes my projects are like children. You know, they're never favourites, but they're all interesting in their own way. And I think a lot of it is, and maybe this is something useful for people interested in government. I found it always useful for every project I go into to decide what's the one thing I want to learn from this project. And every project I've been on, I've learned something, or I've managed to achieve something. So like I was when I was doing stuff to do with Brexit, I managed to get a Czech eligibility service in, which made me really happy. On another service, we really got content in at Discovery. So every project I've had like one little thing that I achieved. But I think right now, and it does sound a bit convenient, but it's true. I think the favourite project I'm on is the one I'm on right now, which is the gov.uk accounts. And part of it, the thing which I really wanted to learn about with the gov.uk account was, what does it mean to do things on the gov.uk site? Because the gov.uk site is actually slightly different from the gov.uk services. It has its own design system. Things are set up in a slightly different way. So I got to learn something there. We actually, last week, we released a little button on gov.uk. Lots of pages, you'll see a button saying get emails about this page. And that's had a huge uptake. It's meta user need. And yeah, through doing that, we got to learn so much about what does it mean to put something on gov.uk, how do we talk to people in government that publish stuff to make sure that they didn't get surprised. So lots of getting to learn about the project, and a great team. And yeah, and I guess we can do a little bit of a cheeky plug. My colleague, Ali, the content designer, will be talking about that particular release tomorrow afternoon in the Open GDS show and tell.
Excellent. When is that? Do you want to say when that happens? That Open Show and Tell. I'm curious to learn more.
So some of the others may correct me, unless I am wrong. I believe it's running from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock tomorrow, and I think you can sign up to get the link on Eventbrite. And I am waiting to get corrected or told that I am correct by Kuba and some of the others that are also organising that event. Yes, it's conveniently in the Twitter Spaces.
It is 2 to 4. I just actually added a tweet about it. We still have some tickets left, so if you want to grab one on Eventbrite, please do. We're going to have eight different teams talking about some of the recent work, and yeah, it should be a good one.
Excellent. And Stephanie just became a speaker. Do you have a question for us?
Hi, yes, I do. I just want to say thank you for hosting this space as well. It's been really helpful to hear some stuff. But I was just wondering about these projects. So how do you typically like prioritize the workflow of projects? Is it a case of like you get briefed by other departments, or is there a lot more sort of proactive work that you kind of seek out spaces to improve? Yeah, just a bit curious how you kind of prioritize these all these cool projects, really.
That's a really good question. Who wants to answer that?
I can start. It's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I guess first of all, I would say that most of these projects are proactive and sort of originated at GDS. We work really closely with departments on sort of delivering them. And actually, I would say that obviously departments are probably our biggest sort of most important user group, because so many of the things we make are for them. So GDS has a very clear, or what I would consider very clear, and I hope others do too, sort of strategy for the next set of years. I don't think it's a defined set of years. So I would encourage just kind of typing in GDS strategy, which kind of defines, I think, reasonably clearly some of the things that we are going to do and things we're trying to sort of achieve. And it all sort of boils down to helping kind of provide a personalized and a kind of joined up experience of government for people. And it also goes into quite a bit more detail on specific missions that will help us do that. But yeah, it's you kind of tend to kind of track your projects down to these original missions, and we have a really good sort of product management function that helps us do that. And yeah, that's how that happens in my experience. I'm not sure whether others have a different one.
Amazing, thank you. That's really helpful. I'll definitely check out the strategy and see what's going on there. That sounds good.
I was just pinning it, so you can find now the tweet from the chief executive of GDS, Tom Reed, where he was tweeting specifically about the strategy from 2021 to 2024. Yeah.
And to just again, we are learning as we go. I think we've just found out that private Twitter accounts, not everyone can hear it. So the question that we're answering was to do with how GDS, how the work gets prioritized, whether we get requests from other departments, or how does the work get decided. So yeah, for those of you that might have been wondering, might not have heard the question, that was it.
Great. We have now two more people who became speakers. I think first we had Alec. Alec, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, hi. I don't have any smart question. Maybe just curious how the sorry, that's a user question, not a professional question. How is the digital visas for Ukrainian refugees going? And if your team is working on this or someone else? Just curiosity.
Could you repeat, Alec, which piece of work was it?
Yeah, I'm saying government is now working on the digitizing the visa application process for Ukrainian refugees. We're just wondering if your team is working on this. Sorry, I don't have any smarter questions. So
yeah, that is something that the Home Office will be working on, because that is something sitting with that ministry, and there's a very well established user-centered design function in Home Office. There are quite a few interaction designers and service designers and user researchers and content designers in home office that have been doing in many areas really strong work over the years. So I'm very sure. I haven't been speaking to them about this specific work in recent days, but I'm very sure that there is a group of user-centered design folks working on this as we speak. Yeah.
We might be also worth adding that we are also looking at kind of Song of the UK, which is basically the home for all information about government, for all the content. We're also doing some work to kind of look at these journeys and look at, for that specific subject, how people find information and navigate it, so that we can improve it.
Cool. So we're getting close to 6 o'clock, at least that's the UK time. So I think we had in mind running this for about an hour. But Dan, you are now also a speaker, so maybe you have kind of a last question for us before I think we hit the end button. So Dan, do you have a question for us?
Hi Martin, can you hear me?
Yes, that works.
You can. Great stuff. Thanks. It was just to return to that question about Codesign earlier on. Sorry, I was on the desktop app before and you can't raise your hand or join in with the audio. But I'm now in from the phone. So first, congratulations on this session, pioneering Twitter Spaces. And thanks everybody for it's been a really interesting discussion. It's probably not a great time to ask this question because I think it could be like a really long one. But my question was, how can we involve the people that we're building services for more in the design process? And have you had any success with real code design? And I think Kuba said, what do I mean by real code design? And I guess what I mean by it is kind of like really meaningfully involving lots of different groups of users, not just to come along in a design sprint and sit in a workshop for 2 hours to throw in some ideas about the sort of services that we can design and build, but actually having a real, meaningful, participative design process. For example, I should also say as well that I think at GDS, your sort of like design working practices are much more mature than they are in the departments. So I'm at DWP, and we do some great stuff, and the challenges are huge. But I think we're probably not as mature as GDS in terms of how we do design, and big constraints about user research, big constraints around actually reaching the people that we're designing for. Through data security and just the logistics, especially through COVID, of actually getting into a room with people. I think there's a question in here somewhere, and that is, have you had any success with co-design? Today there was a session, Defra did a session on co-design confessions, and I was really sad to miss it. So there was probably some good nuggets in there. But do you recognise that as a problem? And do you have any ideas for how we can make design more participatory in government?
Cool. Who wants to respond to that, maybe?
I'll have a start. I think, and maybe it's also because I'm new to GDS, when some of my colleagues who have been here longer might correct me with other stories. I think to do with successes, I think we'd say we're getting there. And I think the answer is to try and to make some of that stuff happen is allowing people to have it to be their job. So at GDS, we have a community designer, Imran, and we also have, and in the digital identity space, we also have a community manager, Mildred. And so we're starting to bring in people to, it's their job to figure out how we manage communities, how we bring them along to design things, in the space of programs, so for digital identity, it is the idea we need to be working with designing with other parts of government, and we need a person to help facilitate that. I think that's my understanding is you need people who it's their job, because if it's sustained, you can't be doing that as a side of desk job. So that will be my take. And I will invite any of my other colleagues to add anything before stopping speaking.
Cool. I think I can offer a lens from things that are used not by members of the public, but by other people across government, because quite a few of the things that we are making in the digital units of Cabinet Office, including GDS, are not just public facing, but they are also sorry, but they're also very much for public servants and civil servants. And I am leading a small team working on the service manual that is basically explaining to people working on public services how to create them so that they are easy to use, straightforward for the users, and so on. And all the things that we describe in that kind of like handbook for making services, we are co-creating for the last almost 2 years now with the users. So we are very, very closely working with the users. We've been running like quite intense workshops, had literally like hundreds of people contributing. So we've been creating one piece of guidance that explains how to make services in an emergency. So that was kind of like summarizing all the learnings from the last 2 years or so, from making Brexit and COVID response services. And here we were like, okay, this is a moment in time where a lot of experience has been collected and has been made by different people all across government. So we want to write that down, and we want to give a guide when this happens in the future, because occasionally government has to respond very, very quickly when there are some circumstances changing. So we wanted to make sure that the guidance, the guide that we are writing for creators of public services, that these things are really building on the experiences and the knowledge of people who have been actually doing that. So and that included like a ton of workshops and like a whole range of different formats. So one thing I have to say, I think all co-design processes like take longer, right? So they might not be necessarily suitable for all the things that you're doing, but you will have a higher degree, I think, of appropriateness of the output. I think that's something we've been really pushing for when it comes to creating content for the GAVI service manual. We are now 5 minutes after 6, but we can go a bit further because I saw that there I think at least 2 more people who became speakers, so we can still do that. And unless Dan, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I didn't. That's brilliant. Thanks, Martin and Vicky. I think if we can take those things that we've learned about working with, I guess design teams have got lots of digital skills, and people who we're designing for in the public don't. And if we can take some of those things that we've learned and apply them in that space, and I think like Vicky's shout about having a community manager in place who can really understand and become part of communities, I think that's really promising. Thank you. That's great.
Cool. And we just pinned as well a tweet from Neville Cavendish, who blogged very recently about the future farming co-design principles. So they have been working in a co-design mode for a little while, and then they stepped back and reflected and wrote down, I think it's like 7 co-design principles. So it's just a pinned tweet. You can have a look there. Yeah. There's cool. There is some people went off the stage, but Martin, do you have a question for us?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that at all. What state would you say government design is in this year compared to last Services Week? So what's changed in the last year?
Interesting question. So I think here we have to briefly contextualize. So this session is happening as kind of like one of the very few open ones as part of Services Week. So for the last 4 days, we've been running Services Week, and that's continuing and finishing tomorrow, which is kind of like mostly inward facing for the public sector, where we all talk about services and service transformation and try to connect people working on service in all parts of government, where we have about 50 different sessions and I think 23 different government departments participating and all running kind of like co-conference but stretched for the whole week style event series. So this session is one of the very few that's kind of like public facing. Just to contextualize briefly. So what has changed? I think this is usually like so hard to answer because I keep comparing a bit to these fractal graphics where you can zoom in almost like endlessly and you find more level of detail. So I think there's not really like one definitive answer. But I think one of the things for sure that has really kind of like matured is how we are working remotely. I think especially for GDS, and that's probably also relevant in the context of our now live recruitment campaigns. GDS is not only located any longer in London, but we have offices as well in other parts of the UK. So Vicky, for example, is not living in London, at least not at the moment. Some people have been even like moving out of London and moved close to the Bristol office. Some people are working from the Manchester office. So I think our way of working clearly has changed and how we are working remotely together. So I think that's kind of like one fairly important thing, I believe. And then, well, is there anything on kind of like capability? I think the design team has never been bigger, at least at GDS. So we have hired quite a few more designers, and at the same time, because we haven't all met each other, I think sometimes it's like with a growing design team, like how do you create meaningful connections between people? So I think we're still figuring out how to make that happen in a better way. But I think we're just working on new design community objectives, for example, with all the designers in GDS and also like other digital units in Cabinet Office, which is really exciting, giving kind of like further purpose that is community related, because there's a lot of stuff that we are doing in that regard. And I'm just going to drop and pin another tweet that is an overview of our recruitment process, because I think especially in the last 2 years we've been trying to very much work on the experience of designers at GDS. So I think that's also another dimension of like I think design maturity. We've been working quite a bit. So Tim, mostly, who was here before, head of interaction design at GDS, he's been working on a really clever spreadsheet tool that helps people to look at their skills and career progression. So I think there are a lot of like refined processes inside of GDS that really help members of the design community to understand what their purpose is and how to progress as professionals. So quite a bit of work in that regard. And yeah, if you are interested in what we're doing, you can have a look at the designnotes.blog.gov.uk. That's the design and government blog. So if you just, I will pin that as well, or like the specific tweet I'm going to pin related to our recruitment process is sitting on that blog. So highly recommend you to subscribe to that blog because constantly we're talking about like the things we design, but also how we design and how our community works. So quite a bit of interesting content in there. There was a long monologue, but we are now over 72 minutes in. So I think this might be also a good point to stop potentially. I'm just finding this one tweet. I'm going to pin it. Are there any closing statements that any GDS designer wants to make? Any statements, comments, anything that comes to mind? I think Kuba posted the link before. There is the GDS Open Show and Tell happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. So that's a great opportunity to get a really wonderful overview of all the different things that GDS is making. So we have been running these Open Show and Tells for the last now 4 years, always at the last session on the Friday of Services Week, where we're kind of like opening up our doors quite physically, literally. We've been doing this in the first 2 years, but it's still happening in a virtual sense. So it's a really great opportunity to see what GDS is doing, and you can again like ask as well contextual questions as part of that format. Really related to the actual work. So I'm just pinning that mentioned tweet about our recruitment process. That should be now pinned as the first tweet here, so you can have a look what the GDS design recruitment process looks like. And then if you look at the blog, you are able to subscribe to it as well.
I just want to say thanks everyone for coming. It was really kind of nice to hear some of your brilliant questions and to kind of have a chance to reflect at some of the stuff that we do. And I hope you found it useful as well.
Cool. Yes. Thanks everyone for joining. Oh, Vicky.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also think, as someone who recently came to GDS, from the outside, it can sometimes seem like, there's people that are just, I suppose describe people as the shiny people. There's people doing all this cool stuff. We do stuff and we learn, and I think this is a great example of tonight. We didn't get everything perfect, but we're learning. And so, for those of you, if you feel that you're interested in coming and working with us, this is how things are. We'll try things and we figure things out. So welcome. Hopefully this sort of makes it feel like it's a welcoming place, and we try things.
That's wonderful. That.
Go ahead, Jeremy and Amina. Yeah, if you want to say something to Funky. Cool. Otherwise, this has been really, really great. And sorry about some technical hiccups here. I think there was one last question from Mary, who might have left now. But Mary asked, will the GDS Open Show and Tell be recorded, and will the video be shared with subscribers? Yes, that is the case. So if you do follow the UK Gov Design channel on YouTube, you will find a notification then probably tomorrow evening or so, and you will be able to watch. If you miss it, or if you want to rewatch it, you will find the recording of the GDS Open Show and Tell there shortly. 75 minutes. Thanks, everyone. This has been really, really great. I'm going to have a sleep now because COVID is really hitting me. But this has been a joy. We have been recording this so people can join, can listen to it afterwards as well. And maybe we do this in the future again. Thanks, everyone.